Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress. In 6 days time it will all start. On Friday, November 9th, the first game will be played between world champion Magnus Carlsen and his challenger Fabiano Caruana. We have been counting down from 100 days on Chess to Impress. We've been looking at the first 46 events for the World Championship. Carlsen-Caruana is number 47. We have arrived in 2010, where world champion Viswanathan Anand defended his title against Veselin Topalov. How did that match come about? Being excluded from the World Championship Tournament 2007, Topalov was given privileges for the next cycle. The winner of the 2007 World Cup Knockout Tournament would play a challenger match against Topalov, and the winner would play Anand in 2010. These are the final rounds of that World Cup tournament from 2007. We see in the quarterfinals that Karyakin beat Alexeyev, Shirov beat Yakovenko, Magnus Carlsen beat Ivan Cheparinov, and Kamsky beat Ponomariov. So in the semi-finals we saw two experienced campaigners, Shirov and Kamsky, play against two 17-year-olds, Carlsen and Karyakin. And experience prevailed. Kamsky beat Carlsen and Shirov beat Karyakin. In the final, Kamsky overcame Shirov and qualified for the challenger match against Topalov. It was held in 2009 in Sofia in Bulgaria, and Topalov won. As you can see, he won game 2, Kamsky came back in game 4, but Topalov won game 5 and game 7 and won by 4.5, 2.5. He qualified to challenge Viswanathan Anand. That match was played also in Sofia in Bulgaria, 12 games followed by rapid and blitz in case of a 6-all score. Topalov wanted to play according to the Sofia rules, which means no draw offers, but Anand refused to comply. Topalov's manager, Danailov, said if Anand doesn't agree to the rules he will be forced to, because Topalov will not offer him a draw and he will not speak to him. So we had some needle before the match, and Anand had another challenge. He was delayed because of the volcanic ash emissions from Iceland. You may remember that happened in 2010. He could not fly from Frankfurt to Sofia and went on a 40-hour journey by road. He got there in the end. The match got delayed by 1 day, and here we see both players in action. Anand on the left and his challenger Topalov on the right. And a great match it was. Topalov started very well by winning the first game, but Anand hit back straight away in game 2 and also won game 4. Then some draws and Topalov won game 8 to equal the score. After 11 games the score was still equal, 5.5, 5.5. And in this video we're going to look at game 12. Let's get into it. In this video I'm using the comments from Anand's second, Peter Heine Nielsen, who in 2018 is Magnus Carlsen's second. He analyzed the game in the magazine New in Chess. And Nielsen starts by writing, a score of 5.5, 5.5 and black in the last game is obviously a cause for concern and nervousness. On the rest day before game 12 we worked hard, preparing a completely new opening for the last game. Topalov opened d4 and Anand d5, c4 and e6. Nielsen writes, no Slav or Grunfeld like we had seen earlier in the match, but a Queen's Gambit declined. A solid common sense opening that has stood the test of time through several World Championship matches. Knight f3, knight f6, knight c3, bishop e7, and Topalov plays his favorite move in this position, bishop g5. So Anand's team was prepared for this. h6, kicking the bishop, bishop went back to h4, Anand castled, e3, and now knight e4, the Lasker variation. Nielsen gives b6 as the main alternative. After knight e4, Topalov took the bishop, queen takes, and rook c1, the most popular continuation. Nielsen says that they had focused on this move in their preparations. c6 and bishop e2. Topalov had played this the year before against Carlsen, so Anand had expected this move. Bishop d3 is more popular. After bishop e2, Anand took on c3, rook takes, and he took on c4. bishop takes, and knight d7. Now Topalov castled, and b6. Anand's team expected that Topalov had not looked at this line in his preparations, because e5 was played by Carlsen against Topalov, and also by Anand in a blitz game against Grishuk. And that's why they came up with b6 to take Topalov out of his preparation. Very interesting to get a look into how a world champion prepares for a match. Topalov played bishop d3, he's going to move his bishop to e4, c5, there goes that bishop to e4, hitting the rook in the corner, and rook b8. Here queen a4 is the main move, played by Anand himself against Kramnik on 2 occasions. But Topalov chose for queen c2. Knight f6, a rare move, writes Nielsen. Anand's team hoped that this would come as a surprise to Topalov, so they were still in their preparations. Topalov took on c5, the most principled reply and the only way to fight for an advantage, says Nielsen. Anand took the bishop, queen takes, and b takes c5, and this is, according to Nielsen, the key position. And he writes, obviously the black pawn on c5 is very weak, but is compensated for by the half-open b-file as well as a strong bishop, which will soon start operating on the long diagonal. Black's counterplay seemed sufficient to us, and even gave us some grounds for optimism. If white wants to get real winning chances, he has to play very ambitiously, attacking c5, as well as try to limit the black pieces, which all have access to open files and diagonals. A very difficult, almost impossible practical task. Interesting to read Nielsen's thoughts without any variations, just words describing this position. Queen c2, as expected, writes Nielsen. What an amazing opening preparation by Anand's team. Because they did not only prepare this line, of course, they prepared a very wide variety of lines that could have come on the board. Bishop b7, there comes that bishop to that long diagonal, and knight d2, which Nielsen calls an interesting and ambitious concept. Instead of knight d2, he could have played e4. That is the way to block the bishop, but the long diagonal will immediately be reopened with f5. And why did Topalov not take on c5 here? That's possible. But then there is bishop takes f3, g takes, rook takes b2. And after that rook gets taken, white rook gets taken, and this position is about even. Topalov wanted more from the position. After bishop b7, he played knight d2, as mentioned. Rook fd8, and now rook takes c5 would be a big blunder, because of rook takes d2, queen takes, and black has won a piece. So after rook fd8, Topalov played f3, trying to block that long diagonal. That is what Topalov's play is about in this part of the game. Bishop a6 from Anand, hitting the rook on f1, rook f2, rook d7, g3, rook bd8, doubling the rooks on the d-file, and king g2. White's plan has materialized, writes Nielsen. The concept is that now the long diagonal is solidly protected, so he can start attacking the c5 pawn. However, the d-file obviously is a factor, and black can start dreaming of attacking white's king. Bishop d3, hitting the queen from Anand. Queen drop back, and bishop back to a6, which Nielsen calls a strong psychological decision, offering a move repetition to send the match into a rapid tiebreak. Because this was game 12. If this game is a draw, the score is 6-all, and then rapid tiebreak games would have to be played. Topalov does not go for a move repetition. He played rook a3. And Nielsen writes, Topalov does not repeat, but goes for a risky regrouping of his pieces. He said in the press conference after the game that he wanted to avoid a rapid tiebreak against Anand, who's a specialist in games with less time. bishop back to that long diagonal, and knight b3. And now white does threaten to take the pawn on c5 and win a pawn. Rook c7 to protect that pawn. This rook is now passive, but Nielsen remarks that white's pieces look more sidetracked. These two. Topalov played knight a5, hitting the bishop, bishop a8. An ideal square for the bishop, writes Nielsen. Knight c4 and e5. Black wants to open the long diagonal for the bishop by playing e4. Or, as we see in the game, by undermining white's construction to block the bishop. e4 from Topalov and f5. Topalov took on f5. Nielsen calls this the most tense moment in the match. e4. Black wants the diagonal open at all cost. And here Topalov plays a bad move. F takes e4 is a losing blunder, says Nielsen. But it's also the logical follow-up to white's previous move. Black's queen and bishop will soon dominate the long diagonal. Taking on e4 was not good. Nielsen does not say what white should have played here. My engine wants to play king h3, but also thinks that black is already better here. Let's see what happened after f takes e4, taking that pawn. Queen takes, with check, king h3, and now the only way to win is rook d4. As Nielsen says, black attacks white's king just in time. Knight e3 from Topalov, and queen back to e8. And that's threatening checkmate with queen h5. Forcing white to weaken his position even further. g4 is forced. And h5 by Anand. And now g5 doesn't work because the queen switches back, a lovely switch back to e4, and white has no good defense against checkmate on h4. After h5, Topalov found king h4, which Nielsen calls an intelligent fighting attempt. Taking on g4 is not good, because then there is knight takes g4, and white's queen comes to g5, and his rook to g3, and white is back in the game here. Anand did not take on g4, he played g5 check. Topalov took en passant. Queen takes, black is winning here, white's king is trapped on h4, and his queen and his rook on a3 are misplaced. Queen f1 by Topalov, the best move, forcing Anand to find exact moves, writes Nielsen. And Anand found them. Rook takes g4 check. And you cannot take that rook because of checkmate on the spot. So after rook takes g4 check, Topalov played his king to h3. And now rook e7. Excellent, writes Nielsen. Realizing white's threats are not real, black prepares himself for the double rook sacrifice on e3 and h4, paving the way for queen g4 mate. And let's see what Nielsen means by this. Let's make a ridiculously bad move for white. Let's play rook b3 just to show the double rook sacrifice. It's now a forced checkmate with rook takes e3 check, rook takes, and the second rook gets sacrificed. You have to take, and then this is checkmate. So that's the threat after rook e7. And Anand saw that white's activity, white's counterplay, is not dangerous for him. Topalov gave a check. King g7 and knight f5 check. And black still has to be careful. You cannot take that unprotected rook because then there is knight takes e7 check, king takes, rook takes a7 check, and it is Topalov who will be the world champion. White is winning in this position. So after knight f5 check, Anand played king h7, the right move. Rook g3, the only way to deal with the threat of rook h4 and queen g4 checkmate. Anand took, h takes, queen g4 check. It's not checkmate now because the king can still go to h2. Rook e2 check from Anand. All his pieces are attacking the poor white king. King g1 and rook g2 check. and white now has to give up the queen for rook and bishop. You cannot go to h1 because this is checkmate. So Topalov gave up the queen, bishop takes, and you should not take back immediately. There's also rook f7 check. Let's look at that variation. White is fighting back. White is going to win black's queen after king g6, rook g7 check. There's a skewer. King takes f5, rook takes queen, and now this is very important, to take with the pawn. And after king takes, material is equal. We have a king and pawn endgame with 3 pawns each, but it's completely winning for black. King e4, king f2, and king d3, and this is a simple winning endgame. The king is dominating, the black king is dominating, the white king is going to pick up pawns, and white has no chance here. So after bishop takes g2, rook f7 check is not the right way to go. Topalov took the bishop and is going to try and survive this position with rook and knight versus the queen. But black is winning. The queen is too strong in an open position like this. Queen e2 check, king h3, and there's nothing against taking a pawn on b2, but Anand played it differently. He played c4. a4, a5, rook f6, and king g8. And this is a nice zugzwang motif that Anand brings in that position. And he said in an interview after the match that he really liked this zugzwang. White's pawns can't play, white's king cannot play, and the rook cannot play. If you play something like rook a6, then there is queen g4 check, picking up the knight like this. He can still play with the knight, and that's what Topalov did. Knight h6 check, king g7, rook b6, queen e4, king h2, king h7, rook d6, queen e5 hitting the rook, knight f7 protecting the rook, attacking the queen, and now Anand took on b2. After king h3, queen c7, Topalov resigned, and one must feel for him. He fought like a lion, declined a move repetition to avoid the rapid tiebreak, but it did not work out. Anand won this game, and with that the match. The knight is attacked. If the knight moves, then the c-pawn will start marching down the board, and a move like rook d7 to protect the knight is not possible because of queen g4 check, picking up the rook. There's nothing to play for in this position. Topalov resigned, and this is the final position of the World Championship match 2010. Here we see the table once again. 3 wins from Anand, 2 wins from Topalov. Anand wins 6.5, 5.5, and Anand said after the match, "This was the most intense match I ever played." And 2 years later, it was Boris Gelfand from Israel who had the honor to challenge Viswanathan Anand for the world title. And that's what the next video is about. Hope you enjoyed this video and that you will keep counting down towards the Carlsen-Caruana match with me. We're almost there. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel, and please leave a comment. I will read them all and I will reply to them all. If you like the video, if you like this series, it would be great if you could share it on social media by clicking the share button on YouTube. The link to the series is here. This is Rick for Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.